Hey everybody, hope you're having a fantastic day today. So in today's video, we're going to be covering two libraries by Orchestral Tools, and these are quite similar in nature. These are the Berlin Woodwinds expansion B and C. So these are known as some of the best woodwind libraries on the market in terms of soloist playing and writing. Expansion B is very good for the upper woodwinds, so it contains like the flute and the clarinet, the alto flute, and the oboe and English horn. While expansion C contains the rest of the lower instruments, so you got the bass flute and bass oboe and some other ones as well. So we're gonna go through, and I wanted to play some of the sounds for you, and give you an impression of what I think of the libraries. So one thing you'll notice off the bat is that these are not contact player libraries. They will not show up in your libraries list. You actually have to go into the file section and actually look for them yourself. So I got them loaded up right here. If I go into Soloist 1, you got your capsule file, and then you go into instruments, and then here you can select your different patches. So you have multi and single articulations as usual. We're going to go into the single first, and then here's your 5 instruments that this library ships with. So flute, also flute, oboe, English horn, and clarinet. All right, so let's start off with the solo flute first. I've loaded in the single patch, the flute legato, and I think in terms of how the library functions and what it was made for, the most expressive lines, the romantic lines that you imagine a solo woodwind is just singing on top of it, this is where these libraries shine. Okay, and I want to demonstrate for you, but I just wanted to show you how compact the articulation list is. Actually, there's not that much going on in terms of recorded articulations. There's maybe 6 or 7 patches at most for each instrument. And so I think Orchestral Tools just wanted to keep it straightforward, playable out of the box, and in my opinion, these are really the best sounding solo woodwinds, solo woodwinds out of the box. So let's just get right into it. This is the solo flute legato, and let me just play it a little bit as first, and then I've got a chord progression here that I've set up that we can improvise on top of. So. Just a very beautiful, exposed, detailed sound. You can see here we have the slow legato and the agile legato. So slow legato is perfect for those slower lines, right? And then the agile legato, it'll activate by itself if you play quicker, and that just that makes it more realistic performance, because we don't want longer legato transitions when you're playing a fast line. Then it's going to make the line feel like it's lagging behind. So one thing I'd like to point out is actually that these legato patches have a really special feature when you press very lightly. So when you play with a low velocity, they'll actually start with a very soft attack and then crescendo into the note with a nice vibrato, expressive vibrato, So for example, if I play very lightly, you can hear how it starts very calmly, very nicely, and it crescendos with a nice vibrato, and then it decrescendos back. I can do this on any note for all the instruments. This works. So, this is perfect for starting a really emotional, very exposed phrase. You can start with a very soft note and then continue on your phrase and use the mod wheel to shape your line as you play. So. And then it just fades out. Conversely, when you play harder, there's a harder attack, and then it decrescendos, tapers away, So it's very intuitive that way. You can always reverse this function if you'd like to, but by default, it's set up in a way that I think really works well, and it's easy to play out of the box. So I find that the single articulation patches give you a slightly more tweakability and customization in terms of your style of playing. It feels like this legato patch is a little more agile as well in terms of legato, so it adapts very well to your style of playing and it just sounds very natural. So that's another feature I think is really worth checking out. If you go into the settings, you see here we have two mic settings. We have the close 1 and close 2. So let's just hear a little bit of each. Let's hear close 2. And close 1 one more time. Can't put my finger on what it is exactly that sounds different between them, but I found that in some cases close 1 works better than close 2 and vice versa. So just really interesting. And then you can obviously trigger how much wetness or dryness you want. You can turn on or off the Taldex impulse, because this was again recorded in the dry studio, and so with it on, it sounds really nice and warm in the Taldex studio, or I should say scoring stage, and then with it off, it's bone dry. So let's hear it a little bit. So simply gorgeous. But I like a little bit of reverb in there. So I find that about 50% up for the wet knob is ideal for me. Yeah, and then you also have a niente function. If you turn this on, then as I ride the mod wheel all the way down, it's going to silence the sustained note. So right there, just gone. Okay, so let's turn it back off, and then it'll just keep the dynamic at a very low level. So you still hear the note going there. So that's that. Here you have your volume range. So if it's all the way up, then as the mod wheel goes up, it's going to get super loud. And then if it comes down at the opposite, it's going to be very, very quiet. Around the middle, again, is the sweet spot for me. You got your controls here. If you want to tweak the release, the start, the attack, and then the attack curve as well. And for short articulations, round robins are really good because, actually, let me pull up here. I have the solo English horn staccato loaded up. So if let's go into here. We have the fake neighbor round robins. So if I wanted to play repeated notes, if I turn this on, then I can go like this. But if I turn them off, you hear how they all sound the same. It's the same sample triggered over and over. So in this case, if you turn it on, then you get this like not a machine gun effect where it sounds like the same note being triggered. Cool. All right. So that was the flute, and we just heard the solo English horn staccato, just for a little bit of contrast. But let's actually hear this flute in action, and let's hear it with this chord progression. So let's see what this sounds like now. Slightly glitchy there at the end, but that's fine. The tone is very sweet. It blends in really well, actually, especially with the Taldex impulse. One thing I wanted to point out is that the sustains actually do not loop. Okay, and I actually really like this. The fact that you can hold a note and then the player basically releases the note whenever they feel fit. Most libraries have notes that are sustained indefinitely, so if you wanted to hold it for a really, really long time, you can. And this works perfectly well for strings, but for woodwinds and sometimes brass, this is not entirely realistic because these players do need to breathe, right? So, if I just play a note, like I could say it lasts about 5 to 7 seconds, and that's pretty much as long as you'll really need in a piece of music, in my opinion. At least for my case, whenever I've wanted to hold a really long line, maybe at the end of a section or at the end of the piece, I've held a note, but the player always seems to come off at the perfect time that the music finishes. So it's not a bother to me at all. And if it really is, I can always shift it over, do some kind of, magical crossfading or something like that to get it to fit, but it's not a big deal at all. So it's just a feature I really like. Let's hear a couple of these other articulations. So we have some staccatos. Portato long. Cool. Really cool grease notes. Here's the whole step. Oh, hang on. Whole step 1. And a short portato. You can hear how much intensity is in those samples actually, because they have that little bit of vibrato and they start off with a nice strong attack. So very effective there. Let's move on to the alto flute. So let's hear this with the chord progression. So the alto flute definitely holds the sustain a little longer there, maybe about 7-8 seconds. But my only gripe about the alto flute is that the vibrato is a little overly emotional and a little too bold, in my opinion. I would have loved it if it was slightly more neutral vibrato, just to keep it more applicable to maybe other situations outside of this romantic context. But, you know, again, it's superbly recorded and the sound is lovely. I just wish the vibrato was a touch less, or at least if the vibrato was controllable, the amount I wanted, I could definitely dial that in how I wanted it to. But again, this is a plug and play instrument, you know, it's supposed to sound really good out of the box, which it does. So it serves its purpose. One really cool feature about Capsule is that you can assign you can assign legato transitions to any long articulation, or any articulation for that matter, but it would be most applicable to the long ones. So you can go up here, if you click the articulation, they give you 2 little buttons here. So one is for settings and one is for applying the legato. So you can click it and now it just applies legato transitions to the sustain. So So it's just something to note there. You can do that with any of their libraries, really, that use Capsule. All right, so the oboe. Now, this is one of the standout instruments in the library, for a good reason, too. The oboe and English horn are both superbly recorded, and they sound very, very expressive, just like the other ones. But I don't know, these ones just have something special to them. So let's hear it a bit by itself first. Now the legato transitions in this instrument are a little bit more pronounced, so it does make it slightly tricky sometimes to make it fit in the mix, but I am able to do that. It's not a huge deal, but just a little small note there. Okay, let's hear some marcato. Some trills. It's so cool, like it's kind of a swell, so it starts like softer, it crescendos, but the trill also gets faster, and then it decrescendos and comes back. I'm only doing this because I used to play flute, so I'm used to playing trills on the flute. But anyway, let's hear, let's see, what is this? Trill's accented, so it's probably a strong attack. There you go. Grace notes. Imagine layering these together. That sounds pretty cool. Like the voices fade away one by one as well. That's pretty neat. Okay. Oh, did I play it with the chord progression yet? I don't think so. Let's hear it. I mean, this is what I'm talking about when I think of out of the box playability and sound. I just love it. It's great. All right, let's go on. English horn. Here we go. With a chord progression. And again, a really nice tail, but also the release where the performer decided to come off by themselves. So really lovely. Let's hear the trills. Grace notes. Beautiful sound there. Let's move on to the solo clarinet. So what does this sound like? All right. You'll notice the clarinet does not come with vibrato there. And that's a kind of a typical thing with orchestral playing with clarinets. Usually they don't really employ vibrato for classical or even romantic music. It's just something that that's typically not done. So let's hear the staccatos. This would be great for a comedic effect, you know? Something stupid like that. All right, and then let's see, grace notes. Oh man, this reminds me of Home Alone right away. It's like, you know, you get like doo 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 in the clarinets, and then when someone's peeking around the door, or you know, something like that. Okay, solo bass flute. Okay, now we're getting into the expansion C. So let me just pull this up. So we have Soloist 2, instruments, and then that was 2.1, by the way. They did an update recently. So you have these 4 instruments: bass flute, bass oboe, bass clarinet, and bassoon. Here is the bass flute. Cool, let's hear it with the chords. Interestingly there, the vibrato is slightly shaky, and it sounds like, and that adds a lot of character, you know, because a lot of the time samples are kind of lifeless. They either have like no vibrato, or the vibrato is super baked in and you can't really control it. In this case, I mean, you can't control this vibrato either, but it comes with sort of a human vibrato. It's not entirely consistent, you know, it has some variances in it, so it gives you that little bit of extra human touch, which I really like. So these staccatos are not very aggressive. They're kind of nice little pushes, if you will. Dun 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 dun, which is great. I mean, the bass flute is not really an aggressive instrument, right? Like it works really well for beds and pads, and also as a solo instrument with a sparse arrangement. So cool. Let's move on to the bass oboe. Let's hear what this sounds like with the track. Love the vibrato in there. Just a lovely, lovely sound. Let's hear the staccatos. Cool. Solo bass clarinet, we're almost there. Let's hear this with the legato. Beautiful. Again, just a very pristine sound, superb recording. Legato transitions sound wonderful, but you know, this will fill in the lower register for the oboe, so kind of like an extension. And then this is the last like very common orchestral woodwind instrument that rounds out the bottom end. That's the bassoon. So this is what this sounds like on its own first. Such a sweet vibrato. Here we go. Perfect. All right, and that is basically Burn the Woodwinds expansion B and C. Just a selection of superbly recorded soloist instruments that sound really, really good out of the box. A couple of them have a few dodgy legato transitions here and there, but that's to be expected. You know, in libraries, it's not going to be perfect, but you know, it serves at least my purposes really, really well when I'm looking for an expressive solo line, one that has a lot of, you know, earnest quality and just really exposed and emotional. I'm going to probably turn to this. You know, the Berlin Woodwind main collection is fantastic as well. However, it doesn't have that same amount of emotional quality and detail in it. So I'll tend to stick with the soloist ones for that purpose. But yeah, so I really appreciate you watching. And this is one of my favorite libraries, both of these actually. I just picked up Expansion C because they sent me so for this review, which is greatly appreciated. But thank you so much for watching, and please let me know if you have any questions. Leave them in the comments below, and if you have any libraries that you'd like me to review, maybe orchestral ones or cinematic ones in general, all suggestions are welcome. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good day, guys. Bye bye.